Welcome to this special episode from our coverage live at the WERC conference earlier this year. A special thank you to Syncrato for making this series possible. If you're not familiar with Syncrato, they are the AI-driven operating system for modern warehouses, helping you to boost productivity by 25% and cut travel time by up to 50%. They leverage AI combined with digital twins to accelerate fulfillment, increase customer satisfaction, and optimize warehouse and worker efficiency. Super important. If that's not the best part, then maybe doing it all without any new CapEx might get your attention. Go beyond your WMS and automations and discover intelligent, scalable warehousing at syncrato.com. Find the link in the show notes and enjoy this conversation. Hey, it's Kevin with the New Warehouse Podcast, and I'm on site here at WERC 2025 in New Orleans. And joining me here is Glen Wegel, who is the Vice President of Operations and IT at Kitchen Cabinet Distributors, and he's also involved with WERC as well. So we're going to talk to him a little bit about his setup, his distribution setup, how he looks at things, and also a little bit about what he's seeing in the industry, and also a little bit about WERC itself. So Glenn, welcome. How are you?
Hi, Kevin. Thanks for having me on the podcast. Long-time listener, so big fan.
Thank you.
What do you want to dive into first?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, tell us a little bit about, your setup at Kitchen Cabinet Distributors. Like, tell us a little bit about your network. What does it look like? What is the products? Yeah.
All right. Kitchen Cabinet Distributors we distribute kitchen cabinets. There's zero ambiguity in what we do. So we have 4 distribution centers. One is in Raleigh, North Carolina, one in Orlando, Florida, one in Houston, Texas, and another in Reno, Nevada. And we sell kitchen cabinets that are ready to assemble or assembled to folks in the remodel industry, home building industry, or other dealers and distributors of kitchen cabinets.
Yeah.
And we stock our warehouses full of those. We have large, big boxes that are like 200,000 square feet each. And we enable our customer to purchase a cabinet within a very short period of time. So if you've ever been through a kitchen cabinet remodel at your home, it can take a long time to get your cabinets.
Yeah.
But folks that shop with Kitchen Cabinet Distributors, which we only sell to businesses, we don't sell to the public, I'm sorry, we ship within 48 hours. So it's a very fast turnaround. So it's, it's advantageous to our customer, or not the end customer, but the customer in general, who can maintain a tighter cash cycle, keep cash on hand and not have to spend it until it's time for the product to ship. But more importantly, it gets out to the customer in a very quick fashion, and they can do what they need to do to complete the install. A little background on KCD. Started off as a mom and pop company in Knightdale, North Carolina, North Carolina, right outside of Raleigh.
Okay.
And sold into private equity several years later, and has just continued growing with the current leadership team that we have. And I was fortunate to be brought on 7 years ago as a part of that transition. And we went from having one facility local in Raleigh that was just about 125,000 square feet. Now we have 4. So we're, approaching almost a million square foot under roof. What we do and distribute. So our products have been on either 27 or 28 episodes of HGTV's Property Brothers.
Oh, okay. All right,
we got to do some other fun projects as well. If you like magicians in Las Vegas, there's a real famous one, Chris Angel.
Oh, yeah.
We did his meet and greet room, his VIP room, and his private dressing room. We did the cabinets all for that.
Interesting.
There's another lady on the Food Network. Her name is Artie Sakaria. I think she's a show called The Artie Party or Party with Artie. We did her kitchen for the show as well, and her personal kitchen at home. And that list continues to go.
Yeah.
So we may not be a household name, but it's maybe possible that you have my cabinets or our cabinets in your house.
Yeah. So we got some famous cabinets there. Yeah.
They're fantastic.
Yeah, very interesting. And so your role is VP of Operations and IT, and I think in my experience, at least in my career, like those have been kind of separate entities and sometimes at odds with each other.
So tell us a little bit about how does that work? Because that's under the same umbrella. So how does that kind of work together, and how does that help with some projects?
Like in the name of the business, Kitchen Cabinet Distributors, the last word is distributor. That's what our business is focused on as a whole. So when we think about operating the business, that's a large core of it. So incorporating IT and technology into the space has been key for our business growth. Like we think about riding a horse at full gallop and not being able to smell the roses because you're moving so fast.
Yeah.
Our business has had explosive growth during the entire tenure that I've been with the company. So being able to pair up the two teams, make them sit in the room together and talk through what needs to happen in order to keep moving at that pace. So our sales team, very aggressive, very effective, they get stuff done. And the operations team has to be right there to enable them to do that. So making sure we have the right systems, the right technology, the right infrastructure is key. So having a leader that can work in both spaces is instrumental. So being able to speak at both levels, whether it's the operations level or the technology level, is very prominent. I don't know if you've been into many warehouses lately that don't have a strong implementation of technology.
Oh yeah. It's almost like a must-have now at this point, right? So, what are your thoughts on that? I mean, looking at the space, because you're looking at both, ops, right, or like ops goals, IT goals, and there's so much technology in the warehousing space now, so many options, right? How are you looking at that, and what do you think about the market?
I think that taking a look at the dynamic space makes it hard because there's more options now than there ever has. But I do think that, as a leader of a business, you have to be able to look inwardly and look at your systems you have in place now and challenge the status quo. If your system worked 5 years ago, but you've grown 25% a year since then, you have to be able to take a look back and say, is the system performing the way that I want it to? It's similar in the operation space with a process, right? You want to question outdated rules or processes. We look at seasonality of products, maybe not so much in cabinetry, maybe in other forms of distribution, but taking a look at a static slotting model versus a dynamic one, say, we need to move something around, and using our technology to empower us with the information to do so. That can be critical. So having both the teams in the room together and we talk through those needs as the business evolves has been crucial. So we'll look at everything from peripherals all the way down to like a wearable, all the way through how do we combine it with our equipment, and then even in new facility design and making sure we have the right infrastructure for like our data cables, our CCTV, or other monitoring systems to be embedded within each of those handhelds to just enable the worker to do what they need to do, whether it's complete a checklist on a forklift, complete a pick accurately, or validate that the load is going out on time and into the right door in the right truck.
Interesting. Yeah. And I think it's interesting to hear how you kind of look at that and evaluate that. And it's great to hear too, like you have that, it's a little different perspective, right? You're talking about like building out an operation and, NetWall, you also own IT, right? So you're thinking about all those things where, in some cases, like I tell you a funny story, right? I was in a new distribution center, had been hired to help build it up and, get things done. And IT came in and they installed all the like server boxes on the columns super low. So if a forklift went by too close,
Done.
would knock them out, right? And we're like, we need to raise all these. And they're like, well, if we raise them, like we can't, they're not as easily accessible. Or like we're gonna knock them off. Like so, it's all this back and forth because there's like was this disconnect between like how does operations work versus what works for IT and all these different things. So I think having those together I think is really a great thing and a smart thing to do as well. But now tell us about, because kitchen cabinets are not small, right? So it's not like makeup or something where you can use a lot of these AMR solutions for picking and things like that. Tell us a little bit about some of the complexities of dealing with larger products like this.
Well, non-conveyable larger products, or some people just call it long and awkward or large and heavy. It's interesting. I like to equate it to a football team, if you will. The basics of distribution are all the same, right? You need to be able to block and tackle. And in the kitchen cabinetry world, it's more important to be able to block and tackle because that's the primary basis of what you're doing. It's large items that, while it's heavy, it's bulky, it's protected, it's delicate. And when I think about the acceptance of defects on a cabinet, it's minimal. Like if you look in your kitchen, if somebody installed your kitchen and it had a defect on it or a bump in it, a knock or crack,
you'd be upset. Yeah,
it would be a sad face day. You would be like, nope, take it back. So it's very important to our customers in that, right? So when we think about handling these large and awkward items, we have to focus on what kind of ergonomics we can put in place in the workplace to make sure that it's safe for our team. I mean, there's obviously nothing more important than safety. So we're using powered electric equipment like electric pallet jacks, double electric like 96-inch jacks to do moves, or, the majority, say 95% or better of all of our picking locations are at the ground level. On our labeling, we identify heavy items so people can look at it and understand, is it a team lift or can I do this on my own? Or even in the area of the warehouse where we set aside to do assembly operations. We have tables that are designed at the golden zone of height, so you don't have to bend and rotate, or where there's a table where somebody's going to assemble this cabinet, there's a conveyor next to it, so they don't have to do an awkward lift once it's together. They can just slide it over and go through that. Or even if I think about other ergonomic implementations, like there's a machine that I discovered, one of my colleagues, Seth Hayes, and I discovered at Modex or ProMat, I can't remember at this point which one, but it's 5-6 years ago. It's called an ergo strap.
Oh, okay.
Have you ever seen that before?
Yeah, I've heard of it.
It's a phenomenal. We went from, it took us about 3 to 5 minutes to strap one pallet. We can now strap a pallet with 2 straps in about 45 seconds. Yeah. So when, we looked at the cost exchange and the ROI, it was a no-brainer. But, thinking about these large and awkward items or large and heavy and cabinetry items, we have to be very thoughtful and intentional in how we design processes. So even getting back into more basics with it, looking at pick path strategies, isolating the items by product line is more important than velocity for us. Because if you're going to buy cabinets, you're doing a whole kitchen. You don't just buy one cabinet. So you're buying them all the same color, same style. So the whole concept of like put all your fastest moving items closest to your breezeway or pick path so you can reduce transit time or footstep time to save, to produce efficiency. We can't necessarily do that. And even if I did that agnostic to the product line, it defeats the premise because people are buying a kitchen at a time. Right. So when we go down a pick path, it's very intentionally designed with the largest items to be picked first, largest, heaviest to go on the bottom of a pallet. And then it's, the pyramid builds up. Yeah. So you make your U-channel path down, a case pick aisle, come back around under a breezeway and do the same thing and then end in accessories and then, move it over to a staging environment so somebody can quality control check it and whatnot. But being very intentional is a big part of that, especially when dealing with those items. Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah. And I think it's interesting to hear kind of the little, like you said, I mean, a lot of distribution is the same, but then there's like little nuances with products, right? And it's interesting to hear how you're doing that. And ErgoStrap, I used them myself in a past career and definitely loved them. Sped up our LTL time a lot for sure. But yeah, I mean, I think it's really interesting to hear about that and hear about the business. And now you're involved with WERC as well, right? So tell us a little bit about your involvement with WERC.
So I am the secretary for the advisory board for the Warehousing Education and Research Council, which is hosting today's conference that we're sitting here at. Yeah. We have it annually, and it brings together some of the brightest minds in the industry to talk about what is on the cutting edge of everybody's plate. And we use it as an opportunity to solution share. So my role within that, I sit on the conference committee as well, and we'll review proposals that people want to come in and share what they've got going on. The nice thing about the WERC conference is that it's a non-threatening environment where a practitioner can go to not be sold to, which is very unique. I mean no disrespect to my friends in sales because I have moments that I really want to be sold to. Yeah. And then I have moments where I really want to concentrate on a technology type or an oriented solution or problem solve where I don't want a bias in there to talk about one mechanized or digital solution over another, because everybody has great offerings in the marketplace. And that's when I go to ProMat or I go to Modex when I'm looking for those, because then I can do a comparison and I can say, hey, you have the same type of item. I can go and compare it to A to B to C vendors. Yeah. And I can do it all in one place, and I can help preserve travel budgets. So if you're a member of a finance team and you're thinking about that conversation or that comment I just made, operators are always looking out for efficiency, whether it's budgetary or from a picking perspective. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, or going to the grocery store too. I don't know about you. When I go to the grocery store, I'm like thinking pick path. Like, what's my quickest in and out of these aisles? Yeah,
It's, I love that. I actually do the grocery shopping at home because I can be in and out of the grocery store within minutes.
Yeah.
And I love my wife. She's the most amazing person. And if you're listening, honey, hi, I love you.
He does. He loves you. He mentioned you as his biggest fan in a session earlier today too.
She is my biggest fan. But she will be easily distracted when we walk down an aisle. Something that is not on the list may be on her mind. She'll see it, want to touch it, throw it in the buggy, things like that. And that doesn't work for me.
Yeah.
I like to get in. I like to get out. I like to work on a list. This is an operations problem.
Yeah, there's an operations mindset. Yeah,
it's an operations mindset.
Definitely. Yeah. Yeah, I love that. And tell us too. I mean, how's the conference this year? Right, is it the second day or third day, I guess, of the conference?
Today is, I guess, day 2.5. The conference is going fantastic. I've sat in some very enlightening and educating sessions. I've sat through some that comment through like the basic blocking and tackling of a business. Like, what can you walk away with today? I think one was led by Steve Hopper, and he talked about the seven influences to your KPIs that you can go back to your warehouse team today and make an improvement on. I sat through another one talking about AI integration into our technologies in the distribution and warehousing space. And that was extremely interesting because, there were some heavy hitters in that room, like a gentleman from Tractor Supply was in there talking a little bit about, and of course not revealing anything confidential, but talking about like how they're utilizing a GPT model that's closed off to the general public and encouraging their employees to use that. Also, talking about machine learning statistics for demand planning and those implementations. And, there was some other folks in there. One lady was in from her business in South Africa. So work doesn't just draw from within the United States, we draw from all over the world. And she talked about, machine learning in her business and where they use it for labor management in order to determine trends in the incoming workflow so they could reassign labor before it ever even became a question to the supervisor. It was already providing guidance ahead of time. So even thinking through those type of conversations where it's like, wow, from blocking and tackling to the most technical aspect that's the hottest thing in our industry right now, it's all being covered at work.
Yeah.
And I think some of the other sessions, I know some of the other sessions are going into deeper routes or deeper rabbit holes within that. And I wish I had enough time in the day that I could like pause time and I could go into each of them.
Yeah.
One that I went into was very interesting, and I'll share this with you for a moment, then we can go whatever direction you want to talk about. But it was a panel of folks, and they were talking about, I don't remember the exact title, but it was talking about the current workforce, the addressable workforce, and the future of the workforce. And they use the analogy of a funnel. And it talks about where folks are in the Gen X, baby boomer categories, and those folks are starting to age out of the workforce. And when you look back up to the top of the funnel, the younger cohort generation, there's not a high as a birth rate there. So if we're going to exit 400 million people from the workforce over a period of 10 years, there's not another 400 million behind them to backflow.
Yes, yeah.
So where the conversation was going is thinking about alternate options and how to connect with others that are of age and of ability to work that are typically overlooked by folks. And it was talking about disenfranchised folks, folks with visible handicap, and others with a non-visible handicap. So it was very interesting to listen. Julie Smith, one of my colleagues, she was on the panel from Kitchen Cabinet Distributors and shared, some of the tools that she's empowered our supervisors in our warehouses with, because so many folks do have a undiagnosed disability.
Yeah.
And when you think about wanting to have a good opportunity to work, distribution's a great opportunity for someone to fill in and make a decent salary. You can make a good living in warehousing, be a forklift operator or not, and make great money and have great benefits and a retirement. And, you think about that. Well, if somebody has a conflict in their head going on, or they have something going on outside of work, it's talking about strategies in order to better your business or employ your supervisors to make decisions on the floor, or how to coach, teach, train, and develop with folks when they have these one-off scenarios. And she gave a couple examples, and it actually prompted some of the other panel folks to share their experiences. There was a gentleman from KEHE, and they're like a organic food manufacturer and distributor, and talk about their programs. And his name was Harris. I don't remember his last name, but he further elaborated how they have one facility in Pennsylvania, I believe it was, where their entire forklift team is deaf.
Oh, really?
Which is, to an operator, it sounds counterproductive. Like, well, if you can't hear the horns or you can't hear somebody yelling that you're coming,
usually it's
beep, beep, beep,
it's like beep,
what,
beep, beep.
yeah, what are you going to do?
Yeah.
And I thought the same thing as I sat there. And then another gentleman, Brad, on the panel, he works with Heister Yale forklifts, and he talked about the innovations that they have that are not terribly expensive. They're very affordable, where you have haptic controls on the forklifts or other like sensors that will help them recognize threats as they're driving. But he also pointed out something that I hadn't thought about in years is when you lose a sense, it magnifies your others. So someone who can't hear has more command and control of their peripheral vision and sees more than the average person.
Yeah.
So it was a natural, the conversation had a natural flow. And, one of the conclusions in the conversation was like, let me back up, not a conclusion, right? So one thought was you have a disenfranchised portion of the population that now has found a fit in a business, and they will communicate within their peer group. So if you find success within a program and your company is able to make a few pivots or adjustments to allow them to come in and have a good fit, then you will find yourself employing more of those folks. And they end up ultimately being grateful that they have an opportunity to prove themselves because they have the ability to get in, get down, and get the job done. But people will interview them and exclude them without saying it out loud, which is sad. One other point they had in there, and I thought was interesting because I did this a few years back, probably over 10 years ago, but he was talking about disenfranchised folks in the sense of people with a criminal background. And he used the comparison. He said that over 1/3 of Americans have a college degree, but over 1/3 of Americans have a criminal record. So when you think about what class, like where people are going to fall in, you went to school because your thought process is, I don't necessarily want to do something physical unless it's intentional, right? I don't want to lift boxes and ship boxes. So I want to be the supervisor or do something administrative. So that takes them out of your warehousing population. Like when you think about labor. So that leaves 1/3 with a criminal background, and then another third that most would consider addressable. Well, what did someone do in their background that would exclude them from your type of employment? Most people say, oh, you do a background check, I'm out. What they would end up doing, saying, okay, well, we'll take a look at your background. How long have you been out of the system, or what kind of rehabilitation did you do? And are we in an opportunity where the workforce, we can give you an opportunity to succeed, right? My wife is always telling me, she's like, you should not assume someone's going to fail, give them an opportunity to fail. And she'd be right. I used to run a facility in Columbus, Ohio, back 2014, 2015, and for a few years out there. And there was a large turnover because of process change, management change, and whatnot. And we would struggle to backfill some of these vacant roles. And I remember talking to a friend who had made mention of those programs where people can come back to work. And we had a conversation with, there was like a halfway house, and I'm not doing this justice because I don't remember the exact terminologies, but these folks, they had come out of prison, they're transitioning, and they need work. So one of the number one things I heard from people asking questions in the panel earlier is like, well, how do I find people that show up for work? Well, these folks that are coming out of, the government's care, they have a need to work, a desire to work, and a requirement to work so they can get out of this government housing and into their own independent scenarios and back to being normal life, right? Like reintegration. So they had a transportation to work. They had somebody calling every day from the halfway house to call, hey.
Make sure, And
they would read a list down. And it ended up in that facility that I ran, like 800,000 square feet. We ended up employing over 100 people that were was reconstituted or something. Like they got their rights back because they came out of prison.
Oh, wow.
And they were some of the best folks.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not going to lie and say that people didn't act foolish occasionally, or that some people, when their time was up and they made their money, that they didn't move on. And that's okay. I'm looking to fill vacancies, and that panel reminded me of that experience. And a lot of people don't take those things into consideration when they think about recruiting, like whether you have a visible disability or you have something else that holds you back, like a record or an undiagnosed disability.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's super interesting because there's so much talk about shortage around labor, right, in our industry and in other industries too. And I've experienced the same for companies I've worked for in the past, where if there's anything on the record, it's like an immediate nope, oh, can't do it, right? But I think if you take into consideration some of these programs and things that are out there, like you can really try and expand your labor pool, and there's probably, and I'm sure there's great people in there. They're just got mixed up in some stuff at some point, and I can't hold that against them forever. And I think it's really smart to be able to tap into that. And and I love that they can show up to work and show up one time. They have to, right? In a sense, because that's it's one of the first battles, I think.
Yeah, for their release.
Yeah. So really interesting. So I really appreciate you sharing that, because I think that's a great perspective and different way to look at how to find some potential labor and give people opportunities to be able to do that. So really appreciate you sitting down with me here, and appreciate your efforts in helping put on this conference too, as well as one of the volunteers there. So if people are interested in maybe learning more from you, what's the best way to do that?
I would say reach out on LinkedIn and send me a note. I have my fingers in a lot of places, and happy to have a conversation. And for folks that are attending the WERC conference today, and maybe this is something you enjoy and you're interested in volunteering in one way or another, whether it's one of our local regional councils or for our national conference, reach out. Happy to have a conversation and talk to you about those opportunities as well. And if you've never been to a WERC conference and you're interested, and you're listening to Kevin and his podcast, or you're talking to other colleagues in the field, and you're just concerned that your employer may not be interested in sponsoring you to come, check out the website, werc.org. There is a segment in there with a letter that helps you fill in the names and auto-populate to justify coming out to the conference to your employer and what the value proposition and the return is that you'll bring.
Yes.
I will leave you with one final thought about that for volunteering and coming to these conferences that I like to share with folks that ask me, like, why do you do it? What do you get out of it? Because it's volunteer work. Is I walk away with my own private board of directors. So if I have a problem in the office, the workplace, or something like that, a lot of people aren't necessarily comfortable having a conversation to their boss to say, hey, I'm struggling with X, Y, and Z, because of fear of being judged. They might not do it with their peers laterally, and they're definitely not doing it with their subordinates. So when I run into something that I don't have an understanding of, I know enough people that I've met here through my volunteerism with work that I can pick up the phone and have a conversation. I know who to call if I want to talk about AI-enabled drones. I know who I need to call if I want to talk about ASRS. I know who I call if I need to talk about AMRs. I know who to call if I want to talk about labor industry as a whole. We're taking a look at temp labor.
Yeah.
It's just, having those people in your phone, and you've met them, you've interacted with them, and being able to pick up the phone and ask a question without fear of judgment. It's probably the largest takeaway, that I benefit from these conferences, conferences like this today. So
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. So, and it's a great conference. Definitely, this is my third time attending. So always a great place to learn and get some great insights on just general knowledge, but also interesting topics like you mentioned here. And I attended a really interesting one. We interviewed the guy too as well about active shooter. That was really interesting.
Interesting one.
Yeah, definitely. So we will put all that information at thenewwarehouse.com as well as in these show notes. So Glenn, thank you so much for taking some time to talk to us today.
Yeah. Hope to see all of your listeners out in May 2025 in Jacksonville, Florida at the WERC Conference 2026.
Oh, you heard it here first. Be there.
Hey guys, thank you so much for tuning into today's video here on our YouTube channel, The New Warehouse Podcast, and I appreciate you tuning in. If you liked what you saw, make sure you subscribe to our channel, and if you like this video in particular, make sure you like it as well. And if you want to get this great t-shirt that you see in the video behind me, Warehouses Are Sexy, head to warehousesAreSexy.com and get your own.